Hello, everyone, and welcome to Spill the Pea. This week, we're making our way through Vayeitzei. So we'll dive right in. So we start off being told that Yaakov departs from Beersheba and he's going to Harana. He encounters this place and then decides to spend the night because the sun has set. So he takes some stones from Harana and he places them around his head. And then he lays down and he starts to dream. And in his dream, he sees this ladder that stretches from earth to heaven. And there were angels going up and down and up and down. All of a sudden, Hashem is standing over him. And he tells Yaakov the same spiel that he's Hashem, God of Abraham and Isaac, and that he's going to give him and his descendants the land, and that they will be many, and they'll go in all the directions, and Hashem is with him and is going to guard him and not forsake him. So Yaakov woke up from his sleep and was like, well, surely Hashem is in this place, and I didn't know. And he was in utter awe and was like, this place is dope. It is none other than the abode of God, and this is the gate of the heavens. So he got up early the next morning, takes the stone that was around his head, makes it a pillar, and pours oil on it. And then we're now told that the place is called Bethel, and it used to be called Luz. Then Yaakov takes this vow that if Hashem will be with him and guard him, give him bread and clothes, and return him to his father's house, Yaakov declares that he will give 1/10 back to Hashem. So then Yaakov lifts his feet and he goes towards the Easterners. Lo and behold, there's a well. There are 3 flocks of sheep, which are watered from the well, and the well has a giant stone covering it. Yaakov sees these guys and he's like, Achim Sheli, where are you from? And they were like, Haran. And Yaakov was like, do you know Lavan, the son of Nahor? And they were like, we know him. And then Yaakov was like, is he good? And they were like, yeah, he's good. And there's his daughter Rachel with their flock. So when Yaakov saw Rachel, he went over to help her water the flock. Then he kisses her and tells her that he's her Aunt Rebecca's son and they're related. So then she runs and then tells her dad, Lavan. When Lavan hears all of this, he welcomes Yaakov into their home, and Yaakov stayed for a month of days. So Lavan was like, you are my bones and flesh, but I still want to pay you for your work, so what's your fee? Then we have this side note letting us know that Lavan has 2 daughters, Leah with the gentle eyes, and Rachel, who is beautiful inside and out. Yaakov loves Rachel, so he was like, well, I'll work for you for 7 years if I can have your daughter Rachel. And Lavan was like, well, better you than anyone else. So they made a deal. And Yaakov loved her so much that the 7 years was like the blink of an eye for him. So then Yaakov is like, I finished the 7 years, bring me my wife. So Lavan made a party and invited people, prepared Leah and the maidservant Zilpah, and brought her to Yaakov. Then we're told that in the morning, Yaakov realized it was Leah. So he goes to Lavan and he's like, what did you do? I worked for Rachel. Why did you deceive me? So Lavan was like, listen, it's not how we do things here to give the younger before the older. So if you work another 7 years, you can also have Rachel. So then Lavan prepares Rachel with the maidservant Bilhah and presents Rachel to Yaakov, and he loves her more than Leah. So then he works for another 7 years, and basically we have the first ever recorded side piece. Hashem saw that Leah was unloved, so he allowed her womb to be opened, but not Rachel's. So Leah conceives a boy named Reuben, And she was like, well, Hashem discerned my humiliation, so now my husband's gonna love me. She has a second son and was like, Hashem heard I'm unloved, so now my husband will love me. And the second boy was named Simeon. She has a third son and was like, this time for sure my husband will attach to me because this is the third boy. And so his name was Levi. She has a fourth son and she was like, this time I will give thanks to Hashem. And so his name was Judah. So, of course, after 4 boys, Rachel gets a little touch of envy. And so the drama poured out of her, give me children or I'll die. She says this to Yaakov. So he gets pissed off and he was like, who do you think I am? God? To not make you pregnant? And she does something similar to what we've seen before. She offers her maidservant, Bilhah, to Yaakov to have a baby. So Bilhah gets pregnant and has a boy, and Rachel is like, well, God has judged me, but he also heard me, so I'll name him Dan. So then Bilhah gets pregnant again. She has another son, and Rachel is like, I've messed up my whole relationship with God to be like my sister, but I'm still winning. So she names him Naphtali. So Aaliyah allows herself to get pulled into these shenanigans and has her maidservant, Zilpah, get with Yaakov. So clearly some issues going on here. Yaakov gets with Zilpah. She gets pregnant, has a boy, and Leah was like, well, this is just perfect. So she names him Gad. Then Zilpah has a second boy, and Leah was like, how lucky is this? So they named him Asher. Reuben, Leah's first son, was hanging out in the fields one day and came across this flower, and he brought it to his mom. So Rachel comes over and she asks for some of Reuben's flowers. And Leah was like, have you no shame? You took my man, and now you also want my son's flowers? Are you for real right now? So Rachel was like, fine. You can have him tonight if I get some of the flowers. So now we have the first wife and the second wife staging a whole coup. The drama of the Torah is like, but the sad part is that people think it's okay to keep repeating the same drama and never get the lesson. Now Yaakov is returning home and Leah walks up to him and is like, you've been bought and paid for, so you're coming with me. So he had no other choice. Women circa 2025 have reached this interesting crossroads where they believe that since they know their man is cheating, husband, boyfriend, whatever, they now control the situation. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but being best friends with the mistress does not put you in the position of power. It's quite the opposite. So Leah gets pregnant again, has another son, and she's like, God gave me what I wanted because I let Yaakov have my maidservant. So she named this boy Issachar. She gets pregnant again, and she said, I have something good. So now my husband will permanently be with me because I gave him 6 sons. So she names this son Zebulun. And then she ends up having a daughter named Dinah. Then God remembers Rachel, opens her womb, she gets pregnant and has a son. So then she says, God has brought in my disgrace, and she calls the boy Yosef. And then she asks for another son. After all of this happened, Yaakov went to Lavan and was like, dude, please let me go back to my land. Let me take my wives and my kids. I've already finished my work for you. And Lavan was like, yeah, but Hashem favors you, so that's why I'm so blessed. Just tell me how much you want to be paid, and I'll make it happen. So Yaakov was like, you know how hard I've worked. And yes, everything has expanded because of my relationship with Hashem. But like, When am I supposed to prepare my own home for my own family? And Lavan was like, shh, just be quiet. Tell me how much you want. And Yaakov is like, I don't want your money, but I do want all of your speckled and blemished lamb, sheep, and goats. I want my integrity to speak for itself. And any animal that is not speckled or blemished will be considered stolen if it's counted among my possessions. So Lavan was like, okay, sure. So they separated the speckled and the blemished from the white animals. And Yaakov stayed to tend to Lavan's flock of the white animals. Then Yaakov takes these rods, they're made of poplar, hazel, and chestnuts, and he sticks them in the watering pools where the flocks come to drink. And as they would drink, the white animals would give birth to young who had the speckles and the blemishes. When it was mating season, Yaakov placed the rods for the flocks who were early bearing and left the late bearing without rods. So the late bearing went to Lavan, and Yaakov became prosperous from this. Then one day, one of Lavan's sons was like, yo, Yaakov has taken everything from our dad, and he's amassed his own wealth. And Yaakov also noticed that Lavan wasn't being all buddy-buddy with him anymore. And so Hashem told Yaakov, go back to the land of your fathers, to your birthplace, and I will be with you. So Yaakov called for Rachel and Leah, and he was like, I really don't think that your dad likes me anymore, but you've seen how hard I've worked for him, and he's mocked me, and he's paid me pennies. And I had a dream, and an angel called me, and I was like, Hineni, and the angel was like, all the males are speckled and blemished. I saw how Lavan treated you, and that wasn't cool. I am your God, and you made a vow to me, so go ahead and leave. Rachel and Leah responded to him like, well, we don't get our father's inheritance anyways, and our father sold us, so if God is saying you should do it, you probably should do it. So Yaakov arose, and he prepared everything, the wives, the kids, all of everything that he had acquired, and they went back to his father, Isaac, to the land of Canaan. And now we're told that Lavan wants to go shave the sheep, but Rachel stole his teraphim. Yaakov had also deceived Lavan at this point. So they were fleeing, and they were going towards Mount Gilead. So of course Lavan found out, and then him and all of his people started to chase after Yaakov and his people. But God came to Lavan in a dream and was like, beware of talking to Yaakov, good or bad. And then we're told that Yaakov pitches his tent while Lavan stationed his people on Mount Gilead. So Lavan approaches Yaakov and was like, how could you run away like this? It's not cool, man. You didn't even say goodbye. I would have sent you off nicely, but you didn't even let me kiss my kids goodbye. If I wanted to, I could hurt you, but your God said to beware. But why did you take my gods? And Yaakov was like, I was afraid that you would take your daughters back, and whoever has your gods can die for all I care. So side note here, Yaakov had no idea that Rachel took Lavan's teraphim. So Lavan goes through all of the tents looking for the teraphim, and he finds nothing. He finally goes to the tent where Rachel is, and she had hidden them under herself. And then she's like, sorry, I can't get up. It's that time of the month. So Yaakov gets pissed again. Clearly he has some anger issues here. So he approaches Lavan and he's like, what is with you? What exactly did I do to you to make you harassing me? Okay, you didn't find anything here. How dare you? I worked for you for 20 years, brought you the best of the best. For your daughters, I worked 14 years, and for your flocks, I worked 6 years. And you repaid me by reducing my pay. And if it wasn't for the God of my fathers, you would have kicked me out by now. So Lavan was like, first of all, the daughters are mine, the kids are mine, and the flocks are mine. But I can't do anything to them, so let's make a deal. So they gathered some stones, they made a mound, and they called it Galid. And Lavan was like, may Hashem watch over us, and if you don't treat my daughters well, or you marry someone that you shouldn't, God will watch over you. So they slaughtered a slaughtering, had a meal, and they spent the night on the mountain. Lavan got up early the next day. He kissed his sons and his daughters, he blessed them, and he went back to his place. And Yaakov went to his place. The angels appeared to him, and he thought that it was a godly place, so he named it Mahanaim. So this was kind of a long one, especially compared to last week. First of all, such a drama. It's like you're reading e-news or something. So let's get to it. Vayeitzei literally means, and he went out. Out from where? A place, a time, a consciousness, out of familiar, and out to where? Elevated consciousness, spiritual exile, and why is the sun setting? So we're told that Yaakov leaves Beersheba for Harana because the sun had set. Okay, so we're going through some chronological things that we're going to get in order. So first he leaves Beersheba because the sun had set. So why does it matter to us that the sun went down? The sun is the light of the Creator. And when the sun is setting, we feel darkness. And in that darkness, we feel that our connection to our Creator is lost. So the sun is setting for Yaakov, and he leaves Beersheba to Harana. Beersheba is a city of oaths. When we take an oath, we have gevura, discipline, strength. And Harana means wrath, anger, heat. So we leave discipline, and we not only get angry, we lose our sense of connection to the Creator. Okay, so then we have the situation with the stones, and again, we have some chronological order issues. So we're told that Yaakov takes the stones from Harana and he places them around his head. So how does that work? Stones are a metaphor for stubbornness. To be hard-headed is something that most of us have been called at one point or another. Stones are also grounding. So when he's taking these stones, he's being stubborn in his anger and simultaneously seeking grounding through the emotion. And then he lays down in this place. So what happens when we lay down? Our guard is down. Our defenses are down. We're the most vulnerable. And vulnerability leads to connection, which is why he now had this dream of the ladder. And this ladder is the bridge between the Malchut, the earthly existence, and the Keter, the spiritual connection. We got a little foreshadowing going on here. It's storytelling at its finest. So then Hashem shows up, and we get the same rundown that Abraham and Isaac got. So Yaakov wakes up from this dream, and he's like, wow, this is where Hashem is. What's the connection? Our emotions are meant to connect us with our Creator. Yaakov was in a fit of rage. He moved from simply experiencing his anger to observing it, and therefore being able to choose to ground himself while still feeling. We're human. We are meant to have waves of emotion. We're meant to feel, but we are not meant to live in these places. So when Yaakov grounded himself, his emotion became a place where he could lay down, relax, become vulnerable, understand what it really is that made him feel angry. Lack of the sense of connection to Hashem. Darkness often makes us feel that we're disconnected from our Creator and from the light. And we can kind of get lost in darkness sometimes. So, what Yaakov is showing us is that the emotion is only the doorway to connecting to the light further. He didn't take his anger and say, well, I guess I'm just an angry person. No, he chose to ground himself, to become vulnerable. And in that vulnerability, he found exactly what he thought he was disconnected from. Remember, we started with stones around his head, and we ended with one stone. Many times we feel that our emotions are these overwhelming, heavy things that we need to carry around. But Yaakov's stones condensed into one stone, and then it was consecrated. When we're angry, we tend to harden head, heart, ego. The stones are the stubbornness, but Yaakov didn't run from his emotions. He placed them around his head, meaning he acknowledged them but didn't allow them to enter into his essence. So then Yaakov does something that so far no one else has done. So far Hashem has made all the promises that he was going to do his part. This is the first time that we have voluntary participation in the process, in acknowledging that everything we do is due to Hashem. And he says he will give a tenth of everything. He lifts his feet and he starts walking east. East is tiferet, balance. Balance leads him to a well, which is ever-flowing divinity. At this well, there are 3 flocks, an arbitrary 3. Think not. Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov. 3 flocks being nourished at the same well. So we fast forward through Yaakov being awestruck by Rachel. He's now made it to the house with Lavan. And Lavan says to Yaakov, you are my bones and flesh. So Yaakov has this incredibly spiritually elevating experience with Hashem. And then here's Lavan calling him bone and flesh. This is the latter. He experienced the light of Hashem, and then he has to deal with Lavan face to face, calling him a lump of meat. This shows that Lavan is more earth-based. He lacks connection. He only sees Yaakov as a bloodline relation, not a spiritually connected family member. So then we're told that Lavan has 2 daughters. The firstborn daughter, Leah, with gentle eyes, and the second daughter, Rachel, who has beautiful form and appearance. Now what just happened? Yaakov was yanked off of his spiritual ladder and called a piece of meat. So he's now been brought down to the earthly consciousness, and so he decided that having a 10 was better than having an 8. So he told Lavan that he would work 7 years for Rachel. So Yaakov finishes the 7 years, and Lavan ends up giving him Leah. Why does it matter? Yaakov became so focused on the physical, the doing, what he was going to get. He focused only on the earthly side of things. And what happened? He got bamboozled. So many times in life, we're focused on the shiniest thing or the prettiest thing or the most expensive or the biggest or the flashiest or whatever you can think of. And we completely forget that whatever it is that we are seeking has divine intention. If we're grateful and we're aligned with that divine intention, we tend to understand these things as blessings. When we are not aligned and we do things from ourselves because we deserve it and we can do it, we tend to understand things as lessons. So Yaakov fell in love with Rachel's form, but the Creator built Israel through Leah's faith. Sometimes the thing we don't choose chooses us. So there's something to these maidservants as well. Leah's maidservant was named Zilpah, which comes from the root zalaf, which means to pour or to flow. Rachel's maidservant was named Bilhah, which comes from the root bala, which means trouble or distress. Each of the first 3 sons that Leah had were a plea for her husband to actually pay attention to her. In any way, it's quite sad. It's even more sad to think that there are so many women nowadays that do the same things. What makeup are you putting on? Or how do you change your face? Or what kind of clothes are you wearing? Or how are you speaking? All because we're desperately trying to chase after a man or to get his attention. She has number 4, and she finally decided to thank Hashem for her blessing, the boy. So now Rachel comes in and turns the drama up a notch when she's like, "Give me a baby or I'll die," to Yaakov. And dear Yaakov, he clearly has some challenges with anger. So this shows us that no matter where you come from, no matter how good you are still susceptible to emotions. The point in life is not to be void of emotions. The point in life is to learn how to use our emotions as a grounds for growth. So back to the story. So Yaakov was basically like, "I'm not God, don't blame me." He's holding her accountable. Rachel's actions become from envy. So then she drags Leah into the drama. And Leah also begins acting from envy. So these 2 women are going back and forth, having their maidservants get pregnant and then getting pregnant themselves. What's going on here? Does any of this feel familiar at all? Women competing for a man, women fighting over a man, women lowering themselves for a man. Is it really about the man at all? Maybe if they both loved themselves and respected their own individuality and remained connected to the light within themselves, they wouldn't have allowed any other human being to make them covet each other. 5,000 years ago, we got the blueprint for what happens when women forget their divine purpose. And somehow we ended up back in this trap. When the feminine reduces herself to fighting for the sake of a man or anything, we lose sight of the light that we are intended to carry, the light that we're intended to hold and cultivate on this earth. And a centered light always attracts. So now Yaakov goes to Lavan to try to make a case that they should be able to leave. Lavan is a tricky guy because we know that he comes from a divine line, but he's very earthly. Again, this is letting us know it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. To accept your divine purpose, to walk in divinity, is a choice that we make moment by moment. So Lavan and Yaakov, they end up making a deal. Yaakov gets the blemished animals and Lavan gets the white. Lavan also means white. At this point, Lavan had taken advantage of Yaakov on multiple occasions. So white here is not a reflection of character. It's to show you a name and an outward appearance are physical. The inside, the core, how a person chooses to behave, who they choose to be is on the inside. So of course, Lavan thinks he's getting the deal of a lifetime because he gets the better animals and he also gets Yaakov to help multiply them. But then the opposite happens. Yaakov places these rods where the early bearers were drinking and they became speckled. And he didn't do the same with the late bearers. Why does it matter early versus late? Early is symbolic of youth. When we are in our youth, we tend to be more open, receptive, impressionable. When we're in our youth, we also tend to get through challenges more simply. We don't take so personally an obstacle that we come in contact with in our lives. Whereas when we're aged, we tend to be more stubborn, set in our ways, and more likely to change paths because of a challenge or an obstacle. Yaakov's anger was one of his obstacles. Anger is something that many people deal with. Yaakov saw this anger as a challenge to overcome that allowed him to connect with his Creator in a deeper, more intimate way. Remember, the sun set first and then the anger came. When we have negative emotions, they're like a warning sign that we feel disconnected from our source. Are you an early bearer who chooses to observe the emotion as an opportunity to grow? Or are you a late bearer who chooses to remain in the emotional cycle and stay bound by the physical limitations of your earthly nature? Because Yaakov constantly chooses vulnerability, humility, hineni, he connected to the Creator in a way that allowed him to end up receiving more in the end. So we fast forward, and Lavan's kids find out that Yaakov has more than them, and Yaakov decides to leave. So now we have Lavan wanting to shave his sheep, but Rachel took the teraphim. Why does it matter? Lavan has only been caring about what he does and what he gets out of it. Many of us live like this today. We care so much about our money, our reputation, our livelihood, and we forget that sure, we're on this earth, but who put us here? Who gave us the skills to carry out that which we do? Who gave us the opportunities to be able to do what we do? Lavan cares more about the teraphim, which represent how he's going to make money, make a living, make something of himself in the world. And it refers to this later as a god, lowercase g. It seems as though our dear Lavan has made an idol out of his livelihood. One important note, Yaakov asked both Leah and Rachel their thoughts about the whole Lavan situation. And their response was like, we're not getting an inheritance from him. And on top of that, he treats us like he's never met us and he took all our money. As long as God says it's cool, we can bounce. So Lavan's focus was so much on his livelihood and getting himself ahead that his own daughters didn't even care to be around him anymore. They had no connection. So Lavan catches up to them, accuses Yaakov. Yaakov has nothing to hide, and Lavan looks through all of the tents and he finds nothing. And again, Yaakov is pissed. And he's like, Lavan, I've done so much for you. What is your problem? Why? Because we were all created to give. But when we feel that someone is taking from us, we feel out of balance, drained. It often makes us react emotionally in some way. When we have reactive emotions, it's a cue to us that something is out of balance. And of course, what's Lavan's response? The daughters are mine, your kids are mine, the flocks are mine, everything is mine. We all know those people who show up and look as though they want to give, as though they care, as though they're pure as white. And then they flip on you. Perfection is a fallacy. Yaakov showed us this time and time again. To be perfect is to need to show up in the world and look a certain way and be a certain way so that people like you, so that you're accepted. Yaakov showed up angry and impatient, and he showed up with flaws, and he chose flaws. Why? Because flaws, mistakes, challenges in life are the opportunities that we have to grow, to become better, to be aligned. And we were never asked to be perfect. We were asked to be aligned. There's no such thing as good or bad because there's only alignment or misalignment. Vayeitzei has been quite a roller coaster. What we are to understand from the dream with the ladder is that life is a constant struggle between earthly stuff and the alignment of a heavenly connection. And in life, we go up and down and up and down and up and down. But this is what makes it chaotic. We don't have to choose to be a roller coaster. We need to choose to be the anointed pillar who remains steadfast in our purpose to elevate our physical challenges. A big part of Vayeitzei is also taking, which is ironic because in the beginning, we have Yaakov making this big covenant with the Creator that he will give, which is our first active participation with the Creator. He's at the top of the ladder. And then he comes back down to earth and he wants to take Rachel because of her physical beauty. And he fails to see the light in Leah. Leah herself brought half of the tribes of Israel, but he was so focused on the external that he took for granted what lies beneath. And it's a big challenge that we run into today. And then Leah takes because she feels unloved, unwanted. Rachel takes because she feels envy. When we allow our feelings to take the driver's seat, we end up in a whole balagan. They're making themselves crazy and making each other crazy, all because of emotions. Emotions that were not grounded and taken to the Creator. Finally, when Leah was like, I'm going to have a baby for Hashem, she had Judah, the lion. We are not takers by nature. We were made in the image of the Creator, and the Creator is a giver, which makes us givers. When there's a clean cycle of giving, there's an automatic clean cycle of receiving. When we mess up this cycle by choosing to take energy, take money, take advantage, take anything, everything is all over the place and it only leads to drama. So moving into this week, when you find yourself seeking someone else's validation, feeling that you have to do something or say something to feel loved, to feel accepted, or to feel like you have purpose, remember, the only one who can fulfill you in a healthy way, a way of shalom, is our Creator. The Creator is here the entire day, moment by moment, giving to you on a constant basis. And when you turn to Him and you say, Hineni, thank you for providing this for me. Without you, none of this means anything anyways. This is to give. This is the acknowledgement, the presence our Creator so lovingly seeks from us. Our job is not to take approval, attention, love, or validation. Our job is to align with the Creator. And when you're aligned, everything meant for you arrives without competition. The Shekhinah never fights. The Shekhinah magnetizes. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you on the next one.